Welcome to Soul Searching. Our guest today is Angela Harris. Welcome.
Hi, Nikki. Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited. I saw on LinkedIn that you shared, and you also emailed me too to share your good news that you got a new job. And, especially in this kind of crazy year, tell us about that journey.
Yes, Nikki. Well, actually, I just accepted a new role. I was previously working in Microsoft Business Operations, and I just accepted a new role as a senior product marketing manager in marketing, and specifically within our security, compliance, and identity marketing area. So I'm super excited.
Now, what is that like to change disciplines, and what prompted you to make this switch?
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of soul searching the last few months, and I even hired my own executive coach that I started working with during the fall. And we've done some assessments, we've had conversations, and also I'm just intellectually curious in nature. And I've been having a lot of one-on-one conversations with different folks across Microsoft to learn more about, their roles. And when I learned more about the product marketing manager role and did an assessment of, the work that I've done over the years, I saw a lot of transferable skills that were there. So although my entire career has been like primarily IT project management work and mainly on the tech side of the house, I still had a lot of transferable skills that were marketing related. And specifically, a lot of the work that I do outside of my day-to-day job with the professional organizations that I support, qualifies that marketing experience.
And you bring up such a good point about, this idea of transferable skills. I think that, it's something I frequently hear from my clients is, kind of this imposter syndrome to be like, hey, once you're a specialist here, that's it, or, if you're not a people manager, how do you switch into that? Like we've got either actual limiting beliefs or self-limiting beliefs. So how did you break that barrier?
Yeah, it's interesting you say, limiting beliefs. So you have to get outside of your head, you have to channel your inner mentor. There may be the thought, I've never done marketing, what do I know? What can I do? Well, I have done marketing and, here's how I've done marketing, or I can get a mentor to help me fill the gaps on the areas of marketing that I'm not familiar with. So just channeling your inner mentor and it's being your best cheerleader.
Boy, and even just the verbiage that you're saying, to switch from I've never done blank to how have I done blank. So that, gosh, that just seems like a real successful reframing tool.
Yes.
Great. And what about like in confidence with the interview? What did if you were to give advice to listeners around interviewing and how do we best sell ourselves, what would you suggest?
Well, what I like to prepare. I'm always trying to be prepared for anything that I go into. And one thing that I did, I familiarized myself with various behavioral interview questions, and I had an idea of how I wanted to respond to those questions. And I also did research on various marketing related interview questions and came prepared with, responses to that, along with, any ideas that I had regarding marketing. So that was one thing I did. And another thing I did the day of the interview, I'm a huge fan of affirmations and power posing. And I literally did my affirmations and I power posed before my interview to
Yeah,
hype
okay.
myself up.
I love that idea of hyping ourselves up. I think a lot of times people are like, either feel silly doing it or
Mhm.
something, but absolutely, it's a huge strength that we can use. So,
Yes.
what are a couple of your best affirmations?
Well, I read the book "You Are a Badass" a couple of years ago. So, in the mirror, you are a badass. You are a badass. You got this. You got this. You can do it.
Nice. I love it. And look at I just how you laugh and just kind of just bringing that energy, I
Mhm.
think is so important. It's like hard to feel like insecure when we're acting confident like that because you're naturally smiling and even your tone of voice, you like have that bring it energy. It's
Thank
awesome.
you.
Yeah. And what about with either like negotiation and that process too? I think that can be making that shift from like, oh, I just want this role to like, hey, I, you know, have earned it or something. Like, what advice do you give on negotiating and especially like on salary?
I would definitely encourage anyone to negotiate. And if you are not familiar with negotiating, definitely tap into advice, of a mentor or a sponsor to get that insight and do your research. There's a ton of information out there on the internet regarding, salaries and I guess, the non-tangible things that you can negotiate for.
Mm-hmm. As you were
Especially, and
going,
I would say, especially, women should really negotiate because we are already underpaid compared to our male counterparts. So it is very important that women try to negotiate.
yes, thank you. Thank you for calling that out. You'd mentioned that have done some soul searching. What either steps, I don't know if there's a couple of tools that your exec coach taught you, like how did you best figure out, what do you thrive at? What are your secret powers? What are the things you don't like doing to
Yeah,
help you to
a
find that right
combination
fit?
of things actually. One assessment that my coach had me do was called a standout report. So that was one of the assessments that we did together, and it kind of gave me, I guess, like, two categories of, gave me two classifications, and based on that, I did the further soul searching to see, okay, what roles, may align with those categories that came out of that report, and also just doing an assessment of what kind of gives me energy and kind of what brings me joy in a day-to-day job. And
Mhm.
also just doing an assessment of what new skills I want to learn as well.
Okay. And when we're like figuring that out, like what do you do to figure out what brings you joy? Like, do you have a list? Are there activities that it
Yeah,
asks
I just
you or?
literally do like a brain dump and, like, things I like, things I don't like.
Okay, nice. I went through kind of an exercise at one point many years ago that was just life changing, but in it actually even talked about like from your first job, like analyzing jobs. Would you like best? Would you like least? And I don't know. It's kind of interesting. My son just got his first job. And so just even talking with him to like find out, I'm like, hey, this is the stuff that's going to help you to figure out what do you want to be when you grow up is
Yes.
even like figuring out, I remember thinking going from being a cashier to being a waitress, like I knew I liked working for tips and also being busy. Like I liked being busier and getting paid more if I did better. Like that was something I learned at 16, like that's
Wow.
what age he is. So it's, I think, and that is a useful skill to find out, hey, do you like quiet time, private time to think and write, be creative or code, or do you like that customer facing? So even just, sorting some of that process out.
Yes, I
Um,
know for me, I like, ideating and collaborating with people, and it's, coming up with ideas and seeing those ideas come together at the end of the day.
I'm curious, have you done any like personality assessments, any like
The Myers-Briggs, I've
Myers-Briggs
done
or?
Myers-Briggs, and actually I just did the Strength Finders recently as well.
Yeah, and I'm just curious, what were yours?
Off the top of my head, I cannot
Okay.
remember specifically.
Sure. Hey, no problem. That is one of the data points that can help us, but okay. Let's see. What about, also soul searching? It's been a big year. We're now at the 1 year anniversary, both of the pandemic, I think also with George Floyd and social and racial justice. I guess just sharing from your perspective, how has this year been for you and what are some things that you have learned?
Yeah, it's definitely been eye-opening, but I also think it just highlights the fact that we've made some progress, but we still have a long way to go. And I remember last year, I think was the 57th anniversary of the March on Washington. And my parents had me later in life, and my parents attended the March on Washington. And I remember my father took me for the 25th anniversary of the March on Washington. And when you look at, what they were marching for then, we're still marching for the same things. And like I said, we've made some progress, but we definitely have a long way to go. And I know a lot of companies are focused on, diversity and inclusion, and specifically increasing the representation of Black employees. And I would just challenge companies to do a pay equity analysis. It's one thing to bring new people in the door, but you have to focus on making sure that people are paid equitably. And we know that Black women make 62 cents of the dollar. And over the course of a 40-year career, we're losing $1 million.
Oh my gosh, when you put it like that, geez.
It's a really hard pill to
I
swallow. It
I
really
was
is.
gonna, gosh,
Considering that, we still have to show up to work and over deliver to be, considered worthy for being promoted when we're already the most educated demographic in the country. And I'm also hearing that women of color are also leaving corporate America at a rate of 50% to start their own businesses. And I suspect that it's because of the glass ceiling that we're encountering in the workforce.
now, I remember watching a documentary with my kids and they kind of were like, God, it's like the same stuff. Like the
Yes.
marches are the
Yeah.
same.
Right.
And,
Right. So I feel like it's time for action at this
I
point. I mean, what we're
know.
talking about is great, but we need action at this point.
I know. And, obviously my experience is different than yours. So, does it make you feel like hopeful or hopeless?
I'm a little neutral right now. Like I said, I
Okay.
do realize, we are making progress. I'm not 100% confident that I will see the progress while I'm still in the workforce because there's a lot to be done.
Well, and thank you for sharing your story here and, bringing calls to action both for companies and individuals. I think, it starts with having conversations and hearing perspectives and getting some of that. So thank you already for your mentoring and giving some of that advice. I'm always curious too about defining moments.
Hmm.
I in the Dale Carnegie course, you shared a childhood story. I always think it's so interesting to like look back at those
Mm.
moments to see like who we are. Because I think oftentimes some of those talents and character traits and superpowers start to develop really early.
Hmm.
What's one that you would share, a defining moment that says something about either your character or talent that you have?
Wow, that's a loaded question. I feel like, so many. I think one of the things that I shared during Dale Carnegie was that, my mother died when I was 3. So that was one defining moment of, growing up without a mother. And then also my father died during my senior year in college. So that was another defining moment of how I, persevered and still finished college and, went on to enter the workforce and get a master's degree. And, just to look at the person that I am now, having overcome so much to get here and just never giving up on my ability and my skills.
Yeah, gosh, talk about that. In the back, we see, hustle and grind. What's the one right behind you?
Execution.
Okay. So are those your three mantras then?
I would say so, yes.
Or is there another one that, or a verse or scripture or mantra? Like, what would you say is the thing that you say to yourself every day?
Yeah, I would say definitely a scripture would be Ephesians chapter 3, verse 6. God is able to do exceedingly and abundantly above all that we ask or think. And I've seen that in my life in so many instances, and particularly with this new move to the marketing department in Microsoft.
That's it. Yeah, that abundance is there.
Mhm.
Awesome. Well, Angela, thank you so much for sharing some of your soul searching, sharing
Thank
some of
you,
that
Nikki.
practical wisdom. And, you're so thoughtful. I just really appreciate it. I love my Carnegie graduates, my clients so much. And so to hear back from people when there is good news. So thank you for being so thoughtful and then being willing to come on and to share that with us all. We're so grateful.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.